word to wise. Grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, we're going to be talking about Hellions, number 13 by Zeb Wells and Roger Antonio. And in this video, we are going to learn exactly why Mr. Sinister should be incredibly concerned. The Mr. Sinister clone, who we witnessed be dissected by Tarn the Uncaring and Ten of Swords, why he should be worried that this clone of Mr. Sinister has returned, and more importantly, why Krakoa's anti-artificial intelligence stance is about to come back and bite them in one of the worst ways humanly possible. We're going to talk about all that and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoy the video, I humbly ask that you Hulk smash that like button because it really helps the channel out. All that aside, let's talk about Hellions number 13. There's a lot going on here, but the main thing that you really need to focus on is the fact that Mr. Sinister has been up to some wacky shenanigans lately. Of course, we know in the wake of the Hellions run-in with the Marvel Comics villain Arcade, Sinister has basically taken over Arcade's operation and has turned it into one of his own personal cloning farms. The character Mastermind, who he was in cahoots with during this whole endeavor, Mastermind is also working closely with Sinister, but the thing is, this is a cloning farm that Krakoa, the Quiet Council more importantly, has no knowledge of, and there's a point here where Mastermind is basically talking about how he has so much to lose, saying that his position, his stake in X-Corp is riding on this. If you're wondering what that's all about, because we really haven't been talking about the X-Corp comics in any way, shape, form, or fashion, what I can tell you is that in the most recent and the second issue of X-Corp, Mastermind basically proved his worth to the group, really more so Angel, more so than he did towards Monet, when Angel lost his shit and started beating the crap out of one of the Fenris twins. Well, in that instance, Monet applauded Angel for how he didn't lose control the way that she did when she was attacked by the other Fenris twin. But the truth of the matter was, he did actually lose control, and Mastermind covered it up by creating an illusion so real that it looked like Angel never transformed into his Archangel form, but he actually did. And basically, Angel is ashamed of this, and of course, he realizes the value that Mastermind has, something that he didn't really value beforehand. He didn't really think Mastermind was that particularly useful to what they needed, and now Mastermind, having proved himself by covering Angel's tracks and making it so that he can save a little bit of face, this is what's kind of ingratiated him into becoming a part of the X-Corp board of directors or whatever the hell it is that they have. But yes, all that aside, Mastermind is not trying to risk this all just to oversee this cloning farm. He wants assurances that things are going to get taken care of, and of course, he wants a particular payment. Now, what that payment is exactly, not really sure, because he kind of has about roughly whatever it is that he could possibly want. I don't think it has anything to do with his daughter, Lady Mastermind, because she is very much alive and well. She did not die in the instance where Arcade had her captured and put into some kind of Saw-style trap. Part of me wonders if maybe it's some kind of an amnesty deal, because she did technically kill a human, or at least orchestrated the death of a human in Hellions number 11, so that wouldn't surprise me. But I feel like it's something a bit more personal. Considering the fact that Mastermind also used to be a member of the Hellfire Club, it also wouldn't surprise me if this had something to do with the resurrection of Chantel Lords, something we know is going to come up in Marauders number 22. But Mr. Sinister has bigger fish to fry, because the Ten of Swords clone that he sent over into Otherworld, more specifically into Amenth, to lead the Hellions on their mission to stop the original recipe for Horsemen of the Apocalypse, as well as Annihilation and all their crew from getting all of the swords so that they could compete in the contest of swords. Well, that Mr. Sinister has returned, and of course he is returned stitched up from the wounds and the damage that Tarn the Uncaring had extracted upon him, and Mr. Sinister proper is incredibly unhappy about this, because this basically creates a problem. we can't forget the fact that during that entire incident, Mr. Sinister, when he realized that Orphan Maker, Nanny, and Wild Child had been killed over in a myth, he kind of just wanted to wipe the whole slate clean. He was trying to get the DNA of all of the Locust Vial that Tarn had on deck. He coveted the DNA of these mutants from a myth who he didn't have their DNA. Like, you know how Mr. Sinister is with DNA. If he doesn't have it, he's gonna find a way to get it. And get it, he did. The Mr. Sinister who got vivisected, he was able to collect all the DNA from the Locust Vial in a myth. And he passed it off to Quanon, and Quanon was able to get the DNA back across the gate into Otherworld, more specifically Avalon. Mr. Sinister proper killed each of the members of the Hellions that were left, Quanon, Havoc, Grey Crow, and Empath, as they crossed through back to Krakoa, and then took the DNA for himself, and basically made it seem as though he was the sole survivor. This is something that actually comes up in regards to the character Prodigy, who is looking into this. He is concerned because he feels like Mr. Sinister is hiding something, and he's correct. He's demanding that the Quiet Council stop looking the other way just because Sinister is on the Quiet Council. He believes Sinister's up to something. He knows that he's lying. I mean, it's obvious to anyone with eyes to see. He even points out how even surveillance on the area where the Hellions came back mysteriously went glitchy when the rest of the Hellions returned, and mysteriously came back online when Sinister made his quotey fingers triumphant return. He's even demanding that a telepath on the level of Emma Frost dive into his mind with some brute force tactics and pull out some answers, but I don't know if or when that's actually going to happen, but considering the shenanigans going on right now, it very likely will, because this clone of Mr. Sinister is willing to let the whole cat out of the bag. No matter how bad Mr. Sinister is trying to convince this other clone that he should be destroyed, this guy ain't having it. It's not so much that he wants revenge, he's also doing what he's doing because he's not necessarily working for himself. This clone of Mr. Sinister didn't go into business for themselves. This clone of Mr. Sinister is working for Tarn the Uncaring. We learn this very quickly when the Hellions show up, and then not long after, this Sinister clone summons the Locust Vial. And if you're wondering why this version, this clone of Mr. Sinister is so readily willing to turn on his own, you gotta remember, for one, the Sinister clones, they tend to not be incredibly loyal. They are honestly always going into business for themselves, but we also have to remember, this version of Mr. Sinister was tortured by Tarn the Uncaring for months on end. He even says as much, that Tarn basically put the screws to him, and well, the rest is history. This version of Mr. Sinister is throwing in his lot with Tarn the Uncaring, and he's basically here to prepare Krakoa for Tarn to come in and run roughshod. So that settles it. The Locust Vial were not a one and done thing. We are gonna get them back. Tarn has technically been teased since Reign of X. He's actually even been teased since the end of Ten of Swords. We knew at some point he was going to come back, and the Locust Vial were gonna make a return as well, but now we know for a fact the Locust Vial are back, which means Tarn is literally right around the corner. And Tarn is a type of character who, yeah, Mr. Sinister is kind of a creepy guy and he's supposed to kind of make you feel uncomfortable, but Tarn the Uncaring is Mr. Sinister if Mr. Sinister were legitimately scary. He is way more cold, way more calculating, and way more willing to torture and kill whoever he has to get what he wants than even Mr. Sinister is. Beyond all that, the other thing I kind of want to talk about too is the whole Smiley situation. We got to go back to, I believe it was Hellions number 8, where the Smileys that were working for Cameron Hodge that the Hellions were trying to take down, those Smileys, we must remember, they wound up evolving past Cameron Hodge's manipulations of their code, that code being the transmode virus that Cameron Hodge himself was for the most part infected with, and what has technically made him no longer human, much less even being the original Cameron Hodge. And the Smileys, they ended up trying to form an alliance with the mutants on Krakoa, something that was being worked out between the Smileys and Havoc. It seemed like the Smileys were primed to become probably the first artificial intelligence in quite some time to actually be on the mutant side for once. But unfortunately, Magneto is not happy about the idea that the Smileys are trying to form an alliance with him because, once again, they have a strict no artificial intelligence policy on Krakoa. The whole idea of artificial intelligence has kind of always come around to bite the X-Men in the ass, whether it's Sentinels, whether it's Mother Molds, Master Molds, Nimrods, you name it, it almost always comes back to bite them, and Magneto has demanded of Quanon that they kill the Smileys where they stand, that they take them down. And what they did was they uploaded a virus into the Smiley system, and it was a sad moment because the Smileys legitimately wanted to become friends with Krakoa, with the mutants, and form this alliance. But unfortunately, not only did this not happen, but they recognized that there was sabotage. And in the last line, we see any of the Smileys say that at first, when they were saying that mutant equals friend, they now say that that is a false value. Now, we also know that Nanny had uncovered a Smiley evolution, a childlike form of Smiley that she's raising in secret. And of course, we know that a character by the name of Dr. Murch, who works for this group called Right, and this is something that's kind of a deep cut. If you have to go back to like X Factor number 17 back in like 1987 to kind of get your first looks at these characters. But this guy is looking into the Smileys and trying to figure out what happened with them. And this is where he discovers that the Krakoans had infected the Smileys with a virus. But the other thing that he's learned is that the Smiley AIs had produced a child, a mutant, so to speak. Something that's not technically a mutant in the strictest sense, the way we think of human mutants like the X-Men themselves, but more in terms of how we look at characters like Brew of the Brood or Warlock of the Phalanx, something more along those lines. A mutant in terms of the fact that it is a deviant from whatever the norm is for their quotey fingers species. Whatever this is a Smiley who is not only an AI, but it is a self-replicating AI. And right now, they're calling in their quotey fingers Zeta team, this group of crackpots and stone cold killers that are likely going to end up being sent to Krakoa to retrieve this mutant Smiley. A Smiley that, for all intents and purposes, Nanny has been taking care of and has been hiding on the island. No one is aware at any way whatsoever that this Smiley exists except for one character, and it's a character Nanny did not want to find out, and that is Orphan Maker. Orphan Maker, as of recent events, has been forbidden from coming into Nanny's room because ever since Nanny was resurrected after Ten of Swords, Nanny came back a much more stern and more aggressive individual than she originally was, and right now she is treating Orphan Maker like he is too old to be babied and coddled the way she used to do before, and she treats him like he is a terrible child because he found the Smiley. And she even makes him promise to not talk about the Smiley, to not tell anyone about it whatsoever. Something that does actually lead to Grey Crow and Orphan Maker bonding in some interesting ways that we see in the comic that I thought was definitely an interesting touch. Like, is the two characters who probably have had the least amount of time together in the comic, and you know, Grey Crow and Orphan Maker, while they don't necessarily, I won't say have the best time ever, but you can tell that Orphan Maker is looking up to Grey Crow now as more of a father figure than I think he ever actually even thought of him as. And whereas Grey Crow, we know, had a terrible childhood himself, he's not necessarily looking into the whole idea of trying to, I guess, be a father figure, but he's also dealing with some other baggage of his own because Quanon doesn't even want anything to do with him right now. She's being oddly cold to him after the Hellfire Gala, so there's some really interesting things going on there. All in all, right now, the Hellions have a full plate right now. Not only do they have Tarn the Uncaring and his Locust Vial bearing down on them, but they also have to contend with the Right and the Zeta team that's going to be bearing down on them, trying to retrieve or maybe even kill the mutant Smiley. But anyways, that's everything I think of import that was going on with Hellions. Definitely some interesting stuff going on there, but most of the focus was on the Mr. Sinister clone from Ten of Swords, the whole connection there. But either way, it was still a fun issue, as Hellions comics are wont to be. Usually they are almost always entertaining in some way, shape, form, or fashion, even when there's nothing going on, and there's definitely stuff going on. That said, if you enjoyed this video, Hulk smash that like button, and make sure to share the video all over the internet and with all your friends so they'll know how you leveled up your comic book big brain in regards to Hellions and Reign of X. On your way out, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and let me know what you thought about Hellions number 13. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.